Hi everyone, my name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. I wanted to hop on today to, I guess, make a follow-up sort of video to uh, my video discussing masculinity and spiritual spheres. I have an idea. I'm not sure what direction it's going to go in. Very similarly to that. I haven't really written anything down, just like I didn't write anything down for that video, and I think that that's for the best. That video and talking about that really got me thinking about balance. Some of the comments were really great. I forget who it was who commented, but it was a really amazing comment from a channel talking about their struggles in coming to sort of a more positive place in terms of masculinity and perceiving it that way, and their focus for the upcoming year and working with that energy and finding an equilibrium. So I'd like to thank them. Although I don't know their name, I will link them below because I will definitely figure it out before uploading this video. But thank you if you're out there watching this. So just finding that balance. I think that this video is not going to be geared explicitly towards masculinity, but more so masculinity versus femininity. Again, using those terms just because they're commonplace and easy, but not necessarily to connote gender or to assign them to a gender, just as aspects of the self that we all have. So I mentioned last time, and I know a lot of you are familiar with concepts like the anima and animus from Jung. I know I've seen people use lunar versus solar, although that one, none of them are perfect. I mean, there's definitely cultures that take lunar and assign it more so to the masculine. So that's entirely subjective as well, just as all of these are, and that's part of the problem, and it's also part of the beauty, and allows for a lot of different opinions, which I think can be really awesome when we are speaking in a positive or constructive light. So without further ado, but that was a little bit of a tangent, but I think it helps to preface what's to come. I want to talk about finding balance versus creating balance. So I think that that's a little bit of a play on words when we talk about finding balance, which we is a term we use often. Um, what we really mean is sort of creating balance in a way, but I do think that there are differences to finding and explicitly finding balance versus creating balance, and the mindset involved there. And when I mean balance, I'm speaking more so in terms of the masculine and feminine within ourselves, or the anima and animus, um, finding a way to sort of allow them to coexist healthily and in harmony, and in a way that where one's not overpowering the other, which I think is something that anybody, regardless of gender and identification, can benefit from. And I think that we as humans require a sort of balance there. Um, and we have, of course, natural inclinations and tendencies, and one may be more naturally present or healthy than the other. So this is not to say that we should be working on, say, the anima or masculinity. Perhaps that's fine. We have a healthy relationship there, and where we really need to get in touch with and balance out is that more the animus, like the more that receptive feminine, which femininity does not need to be receptive necessarily, I don't think, but for just an example, I guess that's a trait that we might associate with that aspect of self. So, I know that I brought up the topic of wanting to see more masculine decks, ones that were more explicitly made for that purpose. And then that also made me think that while that would be nice, that's not necessary. So this, in terms of finding balance versus creating balance, say I find a deck that is explicitly made under the guise of being a masculine, the guise, it's not, guise sounds a little bit underhanded, but under the guise like of being a masculine deck. The titles, the words, the images are extremely explicit in that manner. And I'm working with it in terms of getting in touch with and working with my masculine, with working with masculine energy. To me, that would be finding balance. I've found that deck, and that deck is made for that purpose. And if I use it in that way and it facilitates balance of some sort where that's concerned, then I have found it. It's not saying that I haven't put in any work or created the balance myself, but it did exist in a form that was sort of very easy to use. I didn't have to put in much legwork with that to find that tool that was made specifically for that purpose. When I mean creating balance, I would say there are a ton of decks out there that one might subjectively or personally feel are masculine in nature, despite no explicit artwork or name or title implied or otherwise. So I have examples here for, say, I have for an explicit deck one that would be what I would say you might use in finding balance, or might be more of that nature just because of the title. We have the Dark Goddess Tarot. So goddess, feminine. The images are more so explicitly geared towards femininity. Those concepts through divine feminine, feminine power, feminine energy. That's, I mean, yes, that's subjective, but it's hard to refute. And I think we can all sort of agree where that is concerned. And then for maybe a deck, and this is one that I know is actually popularly believed to sort of have a masculine energy. We have the Fountain Tarot. So this would be an example of where we might we might be finding our own energy, or kind of creating that for ourselves. This is how we perceive it. It's not explicitly a masculine deck. There wasn't any writing or going through, say, the guidebook, the artwork. There's nothing that is telling us that this deck is explicitly masculine. Yet myself and others, as I've seen on YouTube, often find this deck to be highly masculine in nature, and the way that it communicates or feels energetically, which I find very interesting. So there, in that sense, I think that there are plenty of decks that do this, that aren't explicitly marketed or created for the purpose of being either feminine or masculine, of embodying either of those energies, but in practice and in our hands as a community or as a tarot readers, in an independent sense, you find this energy within that deck, and you can then work with it in that way. So that is extremely helpful where I guess my argument for more masculine decks is concerned. Maybe just finding, I've thought to myself after having this a bit of an epiphany for myself, that I have plenty of decks that I find have more of a masculine energy while not being explicitly masculine. So this helps us out a lot in working with those energies. It means we don't have to go out and necessarily buy decks or start this whole movement to create a line of decks. That's not to say that that's a bad thing, or that I still wouldn't love to see more masculine decks, but that's an option for us as well. And I would love to see and hear about decks that you guys have that you think and have very strong energies, either masculine or feminine in nature. I definitely have plenty of decks that feel absolutely neutral. So that was an example, but I think in finding balance versus creating balance, that doesn't necessarily help you guys too much with what I mean, although it hints at it. So what I mean by that is that when we work with tarot, for example, we use tarot, it's a tool. A lot of the time there are many uses for tarot, but a big common thread I think that many of us can agree upon is that ultimately we are using it to attain or reach a balance within ourselves, or we're using it for others if we are professional readers or just those who read for others. We are helping them to find balance of some sort. Of course, there are other types of readings, but in many types of readings, when you break them down, a major aspect is balance. We want to all feel balanced. That might be why we're consulting the tarot, because we feel as though an aspect of our life is out of balance, or could use sort of a nudge in a certain direction, and we want to know where to go. Realistically, and this is coming from somebody who uses tarot every day, who has dozens upon dozens of decks, who reads for others, who reads for themselves, who uses tarot as a tool for others and as a business. Realistically, tarot and the work that we do with tarot could be done without tarot, arguably. Of course, these are my opinions, so feel free to disagree. And I actually saw Natalia from Ouroboros express similar sentiments in, I believe it was her video on binging with tarot. Uh, and I know that she was speaking a little bit more so to a different topic, but she did express a sentiment, and I couldn't have agreed more that the work that we do with tarot, the tool itself is helpful, but the work, depending on the type of work we're doing, can be done without tarot. We can find that balance. We can find those archetypes. We can create them for ourselves. There are ways to get in touch with them. The tarot is nice. We love the tarot, the artwork, the experience, and I won't deny that I would be devastated and I wouldn't know what to do with myself if suddenly I had no tarot decks and couldn't access that. So that's not to say I think that it's useless or not an important thing, but the work that we do with it, and getting in touch with, say, our inner selves, our higher selves, our subconscious, unconscious, the collective unconscious, all of these things and potential avenues that a lot of readers will do. Even if you are somebody who connects with guides and a higher power, there are other avenues and veins of like connecting to that thing. Tarot might make it easier. So in doing that, I think that is more along the lines of finding balance, where something is more so you are seeking, you are knowing that you can find something, you stumble upon it, and that is what is going to facilitate the balance. While it's still a verb, seeking, finding, it does have a little bit less of an action oriented response or connotation. Whereas creating balance, you think to yourself, might seem a little bit more action based. You build, you don't go out looking. It doesn't need to actually already exist. You can start from nothing and make it into being from scratch. So as opposed to going on a journey of observation and learning and uncovering, you start from this baseline and decide what you want and then work to have that happen. And that would be work that you put in action in implementing action, I would say. So you understand that you have maybe a detached relationship with masculinity, or one that is unhealthy. And if you were to maybe seek balance, you might look for opportunities in life, things that come upon you to maybe improve upon it, or to have thought-provoking experiences or connections with others. In creating that balance per se, you might decide that you are going to perhaps you are scared of certain masculine symbols and you're very much aware of that, so you expose yourself explicitly to these symbols, to these experiences, and in a healthy way, of course, not saying that you are shocking yourself or overexposing yourself to maybe like a phobia or something that might be traumatizing or damaging. But I'm speaking, of course, in the best light of both of these things. Of course, there are improper and unhealthy ways of finding balance, just as there are in creating. So, yes, you would say maybe expose yourself to these things. You might set goals for yourself in what you would like to accomplish. I would like to feel this way about this and understand this. I might want to understand this aspect of myself, and I'm going to do that by watching this, exposing myself to this, writing about this. Every day I'm going to take time to meditate with this as, say, like a conscious, a guided meditation. To me, that is creating balance more so than finding it. And I think that both have their place, both have their merits, and I think that some might work better for others, and that there are times when one is called for more so than the other. Um, and I think that it's important to be aware of the avenues available to us in terms of finding balance here. And of course, there's balance to be had in an almost infinite amount of areas in life, whether that be in the mundane world with resources, balancing. Are you a good spender, a good saver? Are you unmotivated, overly motivated? Things like that. There's so many areas that we need balance. I'm speaking on the masculine and feminine, that internal balance between those two aspects of ourselves. And much like the temperance card, I don't think that this is, say, like a balance of equal parts. I don't think that all of us need an exact 50-50. When I think of the temperance card, as I think many think of it in this way, it's an organic balance, something that might be different for everybody. So maybe for me, more femininity is required, or that's like almost like my point of um, my prime operating level is when that is slightly more expressed or dominant um, over, say, the masculine side. So it's something that's different for all of us, and I don't think that we need to necessarily be so consciously aware of which one's exactly the one winning out, or the one that might be a little bit more so. Likewise, I think that there are um, plenty of ways to not supersede, but to find balance between the two without paying mind necessarily to the divide. I think people that are very comfortable with uh, traits and are, how do I want to put this? For example, those who identify as being gender fluid, and who are very comfortable in that, who have worked to get to a place of being comfortable, might not even want to work or identify with like the masculine and feminine in terms of themselves, or maybe they, I mean, they very well might. There's a lot to, there's infinite places on the spectrum. But as an example, perhaps they don't, and they're very comfortable in moving between these traits, states of being, expressions, um, and they are then creating or finding balance for themselves without explicitly paying mind to either, to assign, without assigning names, without assigning roles to traits. So I think that there are ways that we can circumvent the masculine feminine divide in terms of still finding that balance of like those essences within ourselves by other names, totally deconstructing them to their most base elements. I don't know if I was extremely clear, or that might have come out in a bit of a jumble. So I hope that that was clear. But I think that there is so there are ways to circumvent the explicit masculine feminine in connection to the traits that we would normally associate that with feeling comfortable with either. And I think that part of finding, either finding or creating balance is also as oh my gosh, as like shadow work is concerned, and like things that we aren't very much aware of are oftentimes found to be um, large aspects of where imbalances are, whether they be, say, inclinations or urges that we haven't acted upon or acknowledged out of shame, or because we know they wouldn't be accepted, yet they make us potentially happy, things like that. They're all being stored back there, or like trauma that may have occurred as far as masculinity in a negative light is concerned, and how that undertone can create an imbalance. So I think that there is a lot of gender related, I don't want to call it gender because I don't think it exists. I think that gender is a very different topic than what I'm speaking on right now. It's not about gender. It's about those aspects of self that we associate with masculinity and femininity. I think that a lot of those and their roots and the imbalances are related to shadow, and that we aren't overtly conscious of a lot of what those imbalances are, and that, say, finding balance would be almost a journey of uncovering, whereas creating balance, this would be somewhere where it might not be so called for. I mean, we can't just reach into that like unconscious mind, pull it out, and start creating building blocks, or like sifting through it physically, like or even just in the way that we would almost see it as like this very action oriented thing. Um, I would say that even seeking balance could hold the connotation or hold the energy more so of being feminine, of that seeking, that intuiting, that inner knowing. You are finding, you have to be observant, you have to be attuned to these sort of senses, whereas creating is like I said, sort of holds that meaning of being action oriented, and I think that that might be more masculine in nature, like the physical. You almost want to like use your hands when you're talking about it, that creating the balance. I'm going to do this, this is my list. I like that structure that you might see the emperor using, whereas the high priestess is going to be the one to find balance. um, the emperor is going to create it. So I think even those avenues are important to consider in terms of which is out of balance and how we can bring that into balance, just because potentially using um, like, it might not be the same for everybody, but say using sort of more so that feminine seeking of balance, that finding of balance, is something that you are better at, more attuned to, using that to um, do the shadow work that's needed, and to really dive in where, say, negative masculine imbalances occur. Whereas if your the femininity within you is maybe out of balance, it's underdeveloped, creating that, because you're so much more familiar with the masculine energy and creating lists and the structure and the order, um, setting aside, making a list and saying that like meditation's on the agenda, that stillness and quieting of the mind, reading certain books, partaking in activities that exercise, say, intuition, or journaling about getting in touch with certain non-physical senses and feelings. Uh, the list goes on, and I'm not sure if I'm doing a great job at outlining all of that. And I know that this video has been a bit of a roller coaster. Again, just like the last one, this is not one where there is a point to be made, or a conclusion to be reached. More so that this is something that's been on my mind, that I've been thinking about, and I think that it's something that it's like a conversation, an area of conversation that needs more voices, and some of us to share. This video is for the most part inspired by that comment that I received on the video of masculinity. That awesome comment that got me thinking. And here we are with, say, another conversation on that dialogue that was spurred by somebody else's wonderful thoughts, and what that engendered within me and ignited. So for all of you, I would really love to see if you feel at all inclined to speak on this topic, if this is something that's important to you. Not even just commenting, I would love to see videos and just more on this, blog posts, whatever it may be. I think that this is an area that interests me, and if it interests you, if you're looking for, say, like an avenue to get started, I would love to talk. Even if you don't feel comfortable making a video and you just want to have the conversation, I'd be more than happy to. I would love to have these conversations with others to see how they feel about it, if they disagree, what they disagree with, and in what ways. So I can broaden my perspective and my opinions and thoughts on these things. I'm very much open to disagreement here, so don't feel as though you can't, or that's. I think that there's a big, not stigma, but seeing disagreement as negative. I think that you can negatively disagree if you're being, say, rude, um, or something like that. But I think that just disagreeing is not at all negative. I wouldn't think that that's like, if I saw a comment explicitly disagreeing, or like vehemently disagreeing, I would not take that personally, or as though they don't say like me. I think that they have something super valuable, and maybe they've clearly thought for themselves where this topic is centered, and that's awesome. So I would commend them for that. That's not to say that that disagreeing is the only time that occurs. Again, another ramble, but I think I've kind of beaten this topic to a pulp, at least for myself. I've run dry, so I'm gonna cut it here. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, let me know. If you're looking to see more on this topic, I'm thinking that this will be something that might be a part of my channel for a little bit of time now, as I'm starting to create more videos. I hope you guys are all having an amazing day. Yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.